We wanted to have a system that could provide us consistent standards so that we could share it with each other and have something universal. If you look back on what GS1 did with, the UPC, when that was going on in the late 60s and early 70s, and you look, the industry came together and said, we need, a standard.
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chain, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reed.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show. Liz, very special guest today, totally outside of my realm of understanding, and I'm really excited to jump into this, but we talk about supply chain with food and with produce and with everything that's been out there. But today we're going to talk about money. We're going to have money as the central conversation of supply chain and tracking cash and coins and everything and through that whole visibility. So we have Steve Morris with us, and Steve is from Loomis. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I look forward to talking about cash visibility.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're so happy that you're here, and it's something that each of us have money and cash, right, in our pockets, but it's not something I don't think about, how does this get around the country to the stores, to us as consumers? So this is going to be an awesome conversation.
I thought we just went to the bank and grabbed the money and then we put it in the store. Okay.
Lucky you're still at home. So first, just give us kind of a level set, please, if you would, of Loomis. How is Loomis involved in the movement of cash? And what is like the armored carrier's role in a cash supply chain?
Okay, so Loomis has been around for many years through the legacy of Wells Fargo from the late 1800s. Primarily what people associate us with is the trucks that are out on the street. That's what they see from day to day. That's also probably what they see in movies and on TV. And that's the main thing that people associate us with. And that is a big part of our business is how we move money from whether it's a bank, from our branch to a customer location, to a bank, how we deal with ATMs. So that is really the majority of our business is the transportation of moving money. Additionally, we have lines of business associated with cash rooms. So within our branches, we also have currency rooms that manage cash. In a lot of cases, our business model has grown a lot with large banks that want to outsource that business to us to say, hey, they have economies of scale. They have the equipment. They have the people. They have the systems, the resources, and they can do this efficiently. They can manage our risk. So we also have a large line of business associated with our cash rooms that count the money. Another piece of it is coin. So when you look at coin kiosk at any standard grocery store, somebody picks those up and they'll bring them to us and we'll count that coin. So we'll do a coin verification. Banks will bring us coin all the time to count. And then we can use a lot of that coin to wrap. So we also have a lot of business associated with wrapping coin for large banks. And the last piece of it, which is not as well known, but we have a few different hubs throughout the United States where we manage basically jewelry, gold, silver, sometimes the sexier things like delivering a Super Bowl trophy or World Series ring. So it's kind of a specialty business of dealing with the jewelry and other aspects of commodities.
That's so interesting. I actually just saw a little TikTok of the Super Bowl trophy being transported, and then the Stanley Cup as well, and how it came in. I think it was another delivery company, if we will, but they were leveraging off that. So cash has its own supply chain. For most of us, we understand supply chains as product is manufactured, it's moved out to distribution. From distribution, it may go to another warehouse or to a retailer, and then from the retailer, it's sold to the consumer and consumed. So we see it, pretty linear. for the most part. There are some supply chains that are a little bit more circular with recycling aspects. But share with us a little bit more of the detail of the cash supply chain. Does it start at the federal mint and go from there, or just give us a little more behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I would break it down into two different types of supply chain. So one I would call like a wholesale, and this is how the money is moved and managed through the Federal Reserve and the large cash vaults. And that could be Loomis, that could be a financial institution. That money will originate from the BEP for currency and from the mint for coin. So somewhere they have to get it from those locations to the Federal Reserve, and then it will just kind of flow through there. The Federal Reserve also will manage how that money is handled. And by that, I mean they determine the fitness of bills. So they may come to a case where they say, hey, these $1 bills are not worth putting back in the system. And they'll shred those. And so anything that they shred, they'll end up putting back, on behalf of the financial institution that deposited it. So the Federal Reserve will kind of manage that piece of it. But that's kind of the wholesale side of how it moves between the Federal Reserve and the financial institutions. And we're a big part of that movement. And then you can take it down to the next level. Once the cash vaults have that, they help feed it in back and forth to like the branch banks. To our merchants, to retailers, and even to the individual consumer. So, when you look at how do you get money, maybe you go to your local branch, maybe you go to an ATM. We're a part of that whole cycle. And not only just getting it to those places, but it goes back and forth. So it's a complete cycle of when you deposit that money and how it goes back to that branch and then maybe to the Federal Reserve from there.
I have dollars and tens and 20s, right, in my wallet. And you both do too. How is that tracked? I mean, the scope of this is massive, right? How do you track it and know where it is, and does it matter? Like, how do you do that?
So we have our own internal systems where we count money. We handle it on behalf of, our customers, whether it's a branch or ATMs or whatever it may be. We certainly don't keep tabs on, what individuals may have. That's up to the individual bank. I'm certainly glad they don't do that for me, because if you have 10s and 20s in your wallet, you got more than I do. But we keep up with our customers, and, we manage their deposits, any type of variances. And then, obviously that's in our cash room piece of it. But then as far as like the transportation goes, we're strictly just you could say there's $1 in that bag. You could say there's $1 million in that bag. That's up to you and the bank. You tell me what it is. I'll take your word for it, and I'll take it from point A to point B for you.
That's like the transporter movie. Don't look in the bags, just transport it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Just trust it. Is there a way to know what dollar bill has been where? Because I know there's those individual numbers on it, right? Can you get down
serial numbers?
Can you get down to that level of granularity?
No, I mean, it's very hard to tell. That may be something that the Federal Reserve might keep up with. I know that they have certain trackers and things like that, but what the Federal Reserve will primarily do is just make sure that bill's okay to put back in the system. There's different things with soil and just fitness that they'll go, hey, this doesn't need to go back. I can tell you, I have worked at the Federal Reserve before, and I was there in the mid 90s when they were getting rid of the old $100 bills and bringing in the new with all the security codes. And you would just sit there and watch every $100 bill being shredded. And it was sickening, but that's just what they do.
Yeah, that's got to be a different experience.
Yeah.
So we've seen, COVID impact everybody globally. We've seen some industries that were working on innovation and advancements, and COVID has just accelerated that tremendously. How has COVID and the pandemic impacted your business? And are there any changes that were already coming and escalated, or were there net new things that came about from the pandemic?
I would tell you that there were new things. I think it escalated certain pieces of it. it was very good for my self-esteem to be considered an essential employee. So, we were always out there, the people were always grinding out there working with it. But we, like anybody else, had their fair share of issues with absenteeism, or, whether somebody was self-quarantining or whether somebody was actually sick. And we certainly struggle, like any other business right now, of trying to hire, people from the workforce. And it's a difficult challenge right now. But we did work through that just like everybody else did. But our business model changed dramatically in the second and third quarter of last year, where we had a lot of retail business and bank business, which was just the transportation. It's a very simple transaction. I go to a place, I pick your money up, then I take it to the bank. I sign something, I scan it, I put it in our system, and it's just a simple transaction. But what was happening is retail locations were shutting down. Sometimes they were just getting rid of days of service. They might go from 3 days to 1. Sometimes they were shutting down altogether. Branch banks were also saying, I'm shutting this one down. The closest one is, whatever 4 blocks away. But they're also pointing people in the direction of ATMs. So our ATM volume of transactions went up tremendously, starting in the second and third quarter of last year. And, it seems simple enough to say it just went from a standard retail transportation to ATM, but it's a different skill set associated with ATMs, because ATMs are really just mini computers, and you have various hardware vendors for them. You have various schedules. You have various ways to monitor and manage that ATM. So, you could give somebody instructions and say, hey, change out the receipt roll when you're done. Sounds like an easy enough instruction, but you could tell me to go change the oil in my car. Maybe you better show me first, because I'm not sure I know how to do it. But it's a different skill set. Additionally, beyond all the training that we had to enhance for, working with more ATMs, our cash room was impacted by that. So in order to, handle an ATM, they have to prepare the money that goes into it. And then they also have to count the money when you go and service it. So they'll take money out of it, and that's what we call residual cash. So they'll take that and they'll have to manage it and verify it and count it and balance it. So now, where you may have had people that, in our cash rooms that didn't have anything to do with just delivering money to a bank, now you had to have more people in your cash rooms to actually count and verify all this. So there was a big impact, and it's something we had to adjust to last year. And it's still really, cycling the same way. The retail business hasn't picked up completely. It's certainly improved, but it's certainly more ATM work from COVID.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. We talk a lot on the podcast and just in the food industry about shifting with COVID from food service, from restaurants and on-premise to retail. And it's such a similar conversation, just from, banks to ATM, and everybody had to make these shifts to make every whatever it is, right? Where it's intriguing. When we talk about visibility and cash visibility specifically, how do you define that? We talk a lot about traceability with food and healthcare products and accuracy around that supply chain. But how do you define that for cash?
So with the cash visibility initiative, it's something that we came together as an industry, and that industry entails the armor carriers, it entails the Federal Reserve, and primarily their cash product office out in California, and then the financial institutions. So what we're trying to do is have a universal and consistent means of sharing information, whether it's a file, whether it's related to all the work that we're doing, that we exchange amongst each other. So we wanted to have a system that could provide us consistent standards, that we could do that so that we could share it with each other and have something universal. If you look back on what GS1 did with, the UPC, when that was going on in the late 60s and early 70s, and you look, the industry came together and said, we need, a standard. And that's what cash visibility is going to be, something where we can share and have this information. It's very difficult because, each FI, each AC, Federal Reserve, we all have our own systems and they don't talk to each other. So we're trying to figure out how do we make that happen. And I'm not an IT person, and that's really where all the heavy lifting is going on. I can tell you operationally how it flows and how it works, but we need people that know zeros and ones, and they're talking about APIs that will help these systems talk together. So we're very fortunate that we, pretty much everybody has good technology systems that we can start doing that. But it was something that we agreed upon as an industry that we need to work together. This isn't, a competitive edge. This is just something we want to do so that we can all benefit from this practice to have something much more efficient for the entire industry. And obviously it's passed down to the consumer and customer also.
That's great to hear. I mean, at GS1, we talk about the global language of business and, a rising tide lifting all boats for industry. I know that Loomis did a pilot with GS1 US. Tell us a little bit about that pilot. How did the project get started? What was GS1 US's role in it? And are there any next steps to come from it?
Okay, so GS1 is the company that's helping us develop the standardization, that's helping us get the nomenclature for how this system and this initiative will work in the future. So GS1 has provided the whole industry, and not everybody has done this yet, but we want to get what's called a GLN. It's basically it's a global location number. And what that's going to do is it gives your company a prefix that identifies these first numbers are Loomis. The next numbers are going to be associated with what that branch is. And that's how we've associated with our 150 branches that we have. We have a specific number for each one of those. So that helps identify that specific branch with that global number that's on there. So from there, we also had to come up with an SSCC, which is basically it's just your bag. It's a barcode that's associated with a bag or container of the money. So we had to have all these things in place from GS1 with us, with the FI, and with the Federal Reserve so that this all worked together. So we had a universal nomenclature, a universal type of language that we understood with those files. So with that project, what we were doing is taking a deposit from our Portland, Maine branch to the Boston Federal Reserve. So we wanted to show how that package was being tracked and how it would be received. So we could create that information based on that GLN and the SSCC, the bag or container number, and then the contents of it. And we would also apply timestamps with dates and times of what that was. And so once that package was en route and going to the Federal Reserve, we could create what was called a what to expect file. And that what to expect file goes to the Federal Reserve. When our truck arrives there with that deposit, they scan the contents, those individual bags or containers, and then it matches that file. It basically reconciles itself to say, we have everything that you said you were going to deliver to us. And from that point, they say, we got it. I'm going to send you an e-receipt, which says, I have it. So from that point on, we have something confirming that we have that basically in real time. And we're not waiting for a manifest to come back later that's signed by Federal Reserve personnel. And then maybe the FI is calling 3 days later going, hey, where is this? Did you really deposit this? Now we have the ability to have that information on that e-receipt to tell them, yes, we delivered it, at 11 o'clock on a Thursday to the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston. And, there's a lot of next steps with this. And that was a happy path. We didn't go through any type of contingencies of what if there was a missing bag? What if there was a hole in the bag? We just did happy paths so that we could get the system, oriented to what we wanted it to do. And again, it took a lot of work from the IT departments to make this happen. And they all did a great job on behalf of that. And GS1 basically helped coordinate, giving us the numbers and the system to help create those what to expect files and e-manifests that would be shared.
That's so great to hear. I mean, I know that some of our listeners, especially in the retail space and the grocery space, are kind of nodding their heads going, Yeah, we do that. We have, a PO, and then we have a truck delivery, and the truck delivery goes through, and some are leveraging RFID, and some are leveraging, barcodes and so on. But, using the GLN, which is a global location number, and leveraging the SSCC, the serialized shipping container code. And that could be a big container or a small container. And it's just, it still boggles my mind. I'm a technology person. Been in IT for 25 years. I love the gizmos and the new things and all this stuff. But a lot of times systems are created in a vacuum, or they're created in a swim lane where we have blinders on, like we're a horse at a racetrack, so we don't see the other competitors. We just keep going. But when we look into the big world, Liz and I were on a show previously just talking about supply chains are more complicated than people think. And COVID has definitely exacerbated that and made us realize that it's not linear. It's actually omnidirectional all the time. Things coming in, things going out.
Yeah, and to maybe help level set some of this is to understand what we're dealing with is money, and people throughout the industry we've been very apprehensive to go, hey, do I really want some kind of file that maybe the competitor will have, or somebody will have that doesn't need to have this, that's going to get a hold of information. And so as an industry, you always look at the risk side of things with money. And so we've been kind of slow getting to this point. But I think we realize as an industry that there's so much value of doing this. And, what we're dealing with is not, green beans from Salt Lake to wherever. This is money, and people, whether it's an FI or whoever, banking center that may say, hey, I don't want that out in the electronic ether where cyberspace where somebody can get this. So, we have to approach it very carefully.
Yeah.
Most of us have seen the movie The Italian Job, so we know the fear that you're living through.
Mm-hmm. When you said industry comes together, because we found that when industry comes together, things do start moving. How did you, because obviously there were concerns. So one, how did that conversation kind of happen? And then what is the reception now? You have this pilot that's happened. Obviously you have trading partners, whether it's the banks, the Federal Reserve, that are exchanging this information. Are they happy with it? Do they want to expand it? Like, what's the reception been?
So we're still moving through pilot phases. So we're still kind of getting off the ground with this. And it's certainly something that's been discussed and explored over the last 3 or 4 years. And just as some background, it's really the Federal Reserve and their cash product office. They make a lot of the rules. They're kind of the referee that says, hey, I'm in between all of you, the banks, the ACs, and I see what's happening. I see what everybody's doing. So why don't we try to do something like this? And so they kind of came to the table with it. And so we're all kind of working through this, and we're all, going at different paces with it. So I think that it's got a lot of momentum right now. And we're doing additional pilots with additional FIs. And I think that, once we get into 2022, we'll see, sometimes, people are just waiting for somebody to kind of dip their toe in the water and see how this works. And there's some apprehension of what is this going to cost? Is this, what will it do? And I think we're proving that that's very minimal. And I think that we'll find more value to doing this together as an industry.
That's amazing. I wish you all continued success in that, because I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. It's patience. There's a lot that goes into it, especially when you're bringing in quote unquote competitors. It's a co-opetition type of environment. So Steve, it's time in our show where we move to our last 2 questions. And so breaking from the topic here, our listeners would like to know, what is your favorite technology today? Doesn't have to be related to what you're doing in your business every day. I mean, it could be, different things. I'll tell you, a couple of months ago, it was Spotify for me. My kids had introduced me to it, and I'm like hooked. I listen to it in every aspect all the time for everything. But another one for me is I'm still just blown away by YouTube. Every night, like YouTube, it's like this little curated segment for me for information, enjoyment, entertainment. I'm amazed at how content is created now. But what's the technology that's a favorite of yours today?
Well, I really kind of have two, and one I'm very biased because I'm in the transportation business, and when I look at GPS, it has been around for a while, but I promise you, I spent the last 20 years of my career doing a lot of traveling, and you go to a new city, and there was a lot of anxiety about, okay, how do I get from the airport to the branch?
Yeah.
How do I get from there to the hotel? And, and there were still, things that were available with turn by turn directions and things. And now it's like, wow, all I got to do is plug my phone in and I'm good. And, as it exists now, it's like it's been around for quite a while, but it evolves. So now it has things with traffic patterns. It'll tell you, hey, avoid this place because there's a traffic jam or there's construction. And so, even if I know exactly how to get there, I mean, this is still a helpful tool to help identify this is how you get around. And I can tell you that I've gotten so much of my life back by, I probably saved hours every week not going, where did I just turn? I don't know where I'm at now. And to get that back and to get the mental state back is very good. So, and it's obviously very helpful in our professional arena to know exactly where you're going when you might have, 50 to 60 stops on a route and go, hey, I've got a new guy on there. I've got to make sure he understands how to do that while also protecting the safety of driving without, watching it the whole time. So it's certainly very helpful in our professional arena too. The other thing I was going to bring up, and I don't know that it's technology maybe in the sense of, cable TV, and that's not a very new concept, but, you brought up YouTube and, but for me, I've lived in Memphis for about the majority of my life, and I've been a diehard Miami Dolphins fan. And there's really only been about 5 games I'm guaranteed that would be on TV in the last 50 years, and those were their 5 Super Bowls. So I don't know if they're ever going to be on. They haven't been very good for the last 20 years. So the only way I can guarantee that is having the Sunday ticket. And so it's, not just for me, but I mean, there's plenty of people that, have a favorite team that they just don't have access. They don't have a market that supplies that feed to them. And while I will say that it's not always the most enjoyable experience, if I could get them to win at least 10 games a year, that would be awesome. But I love that piece of it. And beyond just, being able to see them each week, that you also have, the red zone, and you have, all these things where you can just catch all the action. And you can catch, any game you want to watch. It's all there. So I think that you can just consume all the football you want with that.
I love it.
Yeah. So just a side note, my husband is in heaven right now because we just got the hockey version of that. We live in Atlanta, and he is diehard Blues. So same, he would say exactly the same thing. His only complaint is that he stays up way too late. So we are aligned. So our next question that we wrap up with is, what has blown your mind? Whether it's technology, something that, with day-to-day life that you haven't encountered, and then all of a sudden, boom, like it changes the way you think. And I'll just real quick, and Reed hasn't heard this yet, but all of my other coworkers have. So I was at a conference in Nashville last week, and somebody said, how do you take a Post-it off? And you rip it, right? You just whoop. No, that's not the right way to do it. You have to pull it. So YouTube that sometime, the right and wrong way to take a Post-it off a Post-it pad. Mind blown. So
I'm going to look that one up, Liz. Okay.
Steve, I will pass it to you.
Okay. So I think that, one of the things that people are always thinking about, in the cash industry, when you're talking about minds being blown or whatever, and it may not be mind blowing, but when people think about what we do, and everybody has a different relationship with money, and you think about that and you think, oh my gosh, how great is it that you could sit in a room just full of money all day long, or sit in the back of a truck with money all day long. That must just be the greatest feeling in the world. And I promise you that wears off. It just becomes work. So I think that people would find it very hard to believe that being around money all the time is just another day. And this doesn't mean that you don't have the security protocols associated with it, but it just kind of becomes work. And the other thing about, money is it can be dirty. If you hauled, 40 to 50 bags of quarters that weigh 50 pounds each, it's just back-breaking work. It's work. So I think that people would be kind of surprised that, that glamour kind of wears off. But, the other analogy I would think about with that, I see the Rolling Stones, touring. You see Mick Jagger everywhere. And you think, man, how cool would that be to be Mick Jagger's bodyguard? And then you think, all he probably gets to do is say hello and good morning. And the rest of the day, he's sitting with his head on a swivel, just watching what's going on. And he's having no real quality time with Mick Jagger. He's just having to protect Mick Jagger. And that's what we do. We're just head on a swivel, protecting money. And it's cool to have all that money. And it's probably cool to be around Mick Jagger, but it's just work. So
just another job.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really love the fact that you're doing a pilot with GS1, working on GLNs and serialized shipping container codes, and just getting the information from you about a different perspective, right? I'm sure that there's a lot that can be leveraged on both sides of this. So thank you again for spending the time with us.
I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.